Hello, everyone. I'll wait a few seconds just for people to chime in. I'm glad you joined me. I'm in Southern California. My name is Mike Patel from Anaheim Hills, Orange County, California, and it is hot out there. It's only 90 degrees, but for us, that's very hot. I know some places in the Texas and some other places, it gets to 100, and that's hot. So 90 is hot for us. So what is going to be the topic today on our live show? Well, the topic today is going to be about the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors settlement, and the commissions, which will affect the buyers, the sellers, and mostly also the real estate agents. So as you may have heard, back in March, April, National Association of Realtors settled a lawsuit worth $418 million. Originally, the lawsuit was about $1.8 billion, but somehow they reduced it and settled it. This will affect the way the real estate business is done moving on. So starting August 17th, 2024, the real estate industry will change forever and forever and forever. This kind of changes or this kind of impact will not be seen in the real estate industry. A lot of things are going to be changing, and I'm going to be talking about some of the pointers, some of the confusion out there, some of the unknowns out there. A lot of the sellers not sure how to list a property or how to pay commissions. A lot of the buyers will not be sure on, do I have to pay the commissions to the buyer's agent? Is that yes or no? I'll talk about that. There's also confusion amongst the realtors themselves. How much commissions will we get paid? Will the sellers pay us the commission to the buyer's agent? Will the buyers have to pay the commissions to the buyer's agent? A lot of questions, and we're going to touch on that. And I'm going to go by slowly but surely about the changes coming up. And I'm going to start with a slide. And the slide I'm going to talk about is some of the summaries. Let me share those. Let me see if I can get to those slides and summary of slides. Okay, just bear with me. I'm gonna try to put the slide in here. There you go. I hope you can see that. So I'm gonna first just in summary mention some of the policy changes. Of course, National Association of Realtors sets the rules and regulations on how we realtors interact with the buyers and sellers. And these are some of the executive summaries. I won't touch on all of them, but first I'm just going to go through the policies. The number one policy, or let me read through it. Pursuant to the requirement of the proposed settlement agreement, the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, and the model MLS governing documents were reviewed and updated with the key changes below. The first change is number one, eliminate and prohibit any requirement of offers of compensation in the multiple listing service between the listing brokers or sellers to the buyer's brokers or other buyer representative. So the biggest change we're going to see, one is that the buyer is now going to have to pay the commissions to the buyer's agent, because according to number one here, the seller can no longer pay. The seller or the seller's agent, which is the listing broker, can no longer pay the buyer's agent. Absolutely not. They cannot pay them any commissions, any compensation, or any concessions directly. Only the buyer's party, the buyers, and those who represent the buyers can represent that. Let me cancel this. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. Had a call come through. So anyway, like I was saying, the buyers will have to pay the buyer's agent commission. And from now on, according to this, the sellers or the seller's party can no longer offer any kind of compensation commissions to the buyer's agent. Also, if you go to number three, eliminate and prohibit MLS participants, subscribers, and sellers from making any offers of compensation in the MLS to buyers, brokers, or other buyer representative. That means they cannot even put how much they offer in the multiple listing service. Part of the confusion was, and part of the lawsuit was, and I'll talk about that more as we go along. Part of the lawsuit says that when the buyer's agent, when they show homes to the buyer, they go to the multiple listing service and they look at how much compensation is given to them. Is the seller or the seller's agent offering the buyer's agent 3%, 2.5%, 2%, or a flat fee of $20,000 or $30,000, depending on the list price? Traditionally, our commissions has been, as you know, traditionally for the last 100 years or so, or since the time of Abraham Lincoln, it has been about 6%. And the way it was distributed typically was from the 6%, 3% went to the listing broker, and then the listing broker shared that portion of the 3% with the listing agent. So the listing agent did not get all 3%. They got portion of the 3% depending on what they agreed on. The 3%, the other 3% went to the buyer's broker, and the buyer's broker shared that with the buyer's agent. So the 6% got split up in two. Typically it was 3% and 3%, but sometimes some agents kept 3.5% and gave 2.5%, or they gave out 3% and kept 2%, depending on how desperate they were to sell the property or how much marketing was done or not done. But typically it was 6% split 3 and 3, or if it was 5%. These days we see a lot of 5%, especially in Orange County, California. We are seeing a lot of 5% total commissions. Of course, moving on August 17th, we will no longer be seeing 5% or anything because the seller cannot offer any compensation. So going to the multiple listing service, and when the agents saw the commission in the multiple listing service, they may show the house or they may not. So let's say it's a Sunday and I'm preparing to show homes as a buyer's agent, and I have 7, 8 properties to show. 2 or 3 I could not show because the seller does not want us to come, or it has a pool and my buyer doesn't want a pool. So I narrow it down to maybe 5 or 6. Out of the 5 or 6, some agents may have been doing that. I'm not saying they do that, but that's the stipulations. That's the conclusion that the MLS or the settlement or the person who sued NAR saying that, hey, buyer's agent were steered by the commission. So in this case, if I was looking at the properties and there was 4 properties or 4 multiple listing services offering 3%, 3%, 3%, and the rest were offering 2% or 1.5% or less than 3%, I may, as a buyer's agent, might have shown them the 3% first, because of course I'm going to make more money. And as you know, real estate agents make money through commissions only. They do not get paid salary. They do not get paid for any compensation for working by the hour or by the showing homes, etc. It's strictly commission. So that was one of the things, and that's why they eliminated this multiple listing service completely from the compensation. There's no commissions, there's no compensation, there's no commissions. Moving on, starting August 17th. So let's move on. It says, we'll jump to number 6. It says, prohibit the use of MLS data or data feeds to directly or indirectly establish or maintain a platform of offers of compensation from multiple brokers or other buyer representatives. Such use must result with the MLS terminating the participants' access to any MLS data and data feeds. What that means is, other website, if you have your own website or other platform, the companies or the brokers have their own websites, or companies like Zillows and Redfins and other real estate companies, even they cannot advertise any kind of compensation to the buyer's agent or the buyer's party. So that's going to be completely gone. So I'm going to move on a little bit and talk about other things. Let me go back to the slides here. Let's see, how do I get rid of this? Okay, there we go. So I'm also going to talk towards the end about what are the common questions a lot of the buyers and the sellers and the buyers and sellers agents are getting. So I'm going to talk about something else right now, and that is, what is NAR? What is National Association of Realtors? I've mentioned it several times. They were sued. The NAR was sued, not individual agents, but the NAR was sued. So what is NAR? So let's look at that. I'm going to show you a policy. Let me see here. Okay, there you go. Let's see. Bear with me. I'm just trying this out. And as I'm bringing out this slide, which I'm having a hard time putting up here, there you go, add to stage. Okay, hopefully you can see it. So as I mentioned earlier, let me just read about why the NAR was sued with this big lawsuit. As I mentioned, it was 1.8 billion earlier, and then it dropped to $418 million. It says here that the National Association of Realtors announced this morning that it has reached an agreement to end its lengthy and costly fight with home sellers who have claimed that the organization is at the center of a conspiracy to inflate commissions and unfairly force sellers to compensate buyers and agents. The settlement would leave Home Services of America as the sole defendant in the Sitzer Burnett case. So as you can see, this was a big issue. It has been settled. Hopefully, there'll be no other changes, and we'll move on. And then let's see what the August 2017 changes or the stipulations, regulations, and the way we conduct our business move on and how it changes the industry. I know one thing for sure. I've been in this business for almost more than 25 years. Excuse me, I'm just going to move this chair a little bit so I feel more comfortable. So I've been in business for over 25 years, and I've seen many, many changes. But this change is a drastic change. It's an impact that's going to have not on our commissions, our policy, the way we work, the way we show homes, the way we talk to other agents, the way we talk to buyers, because this has to do with disclosures. And I'll go through the disclosures as well. It's about how the industry will be conducted from the traditional way of doing business. Just like in the 90s or early 2000s, when the travel industry came and started booking online, with all these Travelocity and Expedia and all those companies, which they were not there. They are there right now, but back then they did not exist. But they got bigger and bigger and bought up the small companies. The whole travel industry, one of the biggest industries to change first due to the internet and the impact of internet, was the travel agency. They eradicated a lot of travel agent companies, eradicated travel agencies, eradicated travel companies, made the prices of booking very easy online instantly. We didn't have to call people. We didn't have to wait people. We didn't have to pay commissions. But obviously, on the other hand, the companies or the airlines kept the commissions. So that's a whole new story. But nonetheless, it did affect the way people did business with the travel industry. And I feel the same way, that this change, this settlement, or this lawsuit which has come up is going to have a huge impact on the way the business is conducted, the way the commissions are paid, the number of agents that are going to be there in the next 2 years, and how much money they make, or how much less money they make, or more money they make. So we're going to touch on a lot of things. So let's move on to the next slide. It's about the NAR. As I was saying earlier, hold on. So as I mentioned earlier, what is NAR? I was talking about the NAR, then I got distracted, or not distracted, talk about another topic, which I thought was very important. So I mentioned it to you. So National Association of Realtors. Let's see, hold on, what's going on here? So what is NAR? National Association of Realtors, the voice of real estate, is America's largest trade association, representing 1.5 million members. This was based on 2024, but in 2021 there were almost 2 million members. And I mentioned this because the number of agents is going to drastically reduce because of this lawsuit. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So representing 1.5 million members, including NAR's institutes, societies, and councils involved in all aspects of the residential and commercial real estate industries. Our membership is composed of residential and commercial realtors who are brokers, salespeople, property managers, appraisers, counselors, and others engaged in all aspects of the real estate industry. Members belong to one or more of some 1,300 local associations and boards and 54 state and territory associations of realtors. They are pledged to strict code of ethics and standard of practice. One of the biggest things about NAR is us agents and those who become member. You can be a real estate agent, or you can become a member of NAR by paying fees and following the code of ethic rules and regulations. So one of the biggest distinctions between a realtor and just a regular real estate agent is that we have to follow code of ethics. We have to be trustworthy. We have to be honest about what we do. We have to disclose our fiduciary duties in writing, things like that. So the code of ethics is a big thing. But I also wanted to make mention to you that the multiple listing services that I mentioned earlier, and where all the data that not only the real estate agents and realtors get, it first comes from the multiple listing service, then it goes on to the other websites like Zillow or realtor.com or any other website that you may be accustomed to searching. It comes from our MLS service. So the way it works is I'm a member of the National Association of Realtors. I also have to become a member of California Association of Realtors, and California Association of Realtors is under the umbrella of NAR, and NAR stipulates to them some of the rules and regulations. So we have to follow the California Association of Realtors, which I'll call CAR now, versus if you're in Minnesota or if you're in Florida or if you're in Texas or if you're in some other states, Washington, then you have to follow that state's Association of Realtors. And then I also belong to the Orange County Pacific West Association of Realtors, where I have other rules and regulations based on the county, the city regulations, the county regulations, because county has their own regular or real estate code of conduct and restrictions and inspections and other rules and regulations. So the MLS has to stipulate and mention those to us as well, if we need to know that. So first of all, I have to become a member of PWR, which is the Pacific West Association of Realtors, which is a member of CAR, and CAR has to become a member of NAR. But NAR does not run the multiple listing service. The Pacific West Association belongs to what we call the California Regional Multiple Listing Service. So it's a multiple listing organization that follows rules, regulations, stipulations based on MLS and also based on your county and cities, etc. So they all fall into one, and then the information is distributed to all. So that's basically what the NAR is and why we have to follow things like that. Now, one of the things I want to talk about right off the get-go is this big tsunami of regulation that's going to hit the buyer's world and the seller's world and the real estate world, is that from moving on August 17th, whoever works with an agent, if you are a buyer and want to work with a buyer's agent, first of all, you have to sign an agreement of a disclosure that if you're going to hire me, then you are hiring me as the buyer's agent. It has to be in writing. You could hire me for one day to show one property. You could hire me for 1 week because you're coming from out of town, you're in a rush, you have 1 week to go, you don't want to get tied up for 90 days. So you could sign an agreement for 1 week, or you could sign an agreement for 90 days or 6 months or a year for me to find a property for you. That has to be in written format, which means that just like when a seller sells a property, they hire a listing agent, and 100% of all the listing agents has a seller agreement, which is called the residential listing agreement. 100% of them, if it's an exclusive right to sell, there used to be open right to sell. That means anybody can sell your property, but 99.9%, if I'm guessing, let's say 99% of all the listing agreements that are with realtors are exclusive right to sell. That means the seller hires one broker to sell the property. Buyers never did that. They did have this agreement. It's been around for 20, 25 years where you have the buyer broker agreement. But I would say 90% from my guessing and from my stipulation, talking to a lot of other realtors, I myself have never signed a buyer broker agreement, but it was there for me to use. So the question is, why do all the sellers, 99% of them, sign an exclusive right to sell with the listing broker? Why do buyers not sign that? So that's going to be in place in August 17th. The advantage for the buyers or the buyers brokers, buyers agents and buyers brokers, is that once you sign that buyer broker agreement, that means when you buy a property, and now we have to add how much commission you're going to pay us. Us means to the broker. So the buyer is going to agree to sign an agreement, whether to show 2 homes in 1 day, or sign a contract for 1 day or 1 week or 90 days or 6 months. Then you're going to agree on how much the buyer will pay the buyer's broker, whether it's going to be 1%, 2%, 3%, or it could be a flat fee. Hey, you just showed me one house, you wrote the contract, I'm just going to pay you $150. Well, guess what? I had a social media post on TikTok, and I got a lot of what we call a backlash that, hey, buyer's agents are not worth any money. I would pay them $50 for showing me a house and maybe $100 to write up the contract and negotiate. And you know what? They have their reasons to believe that. And if they believe that, they believe that. But moving on August 17th, you're going to have to agree with the buyers. Will have to agree with the buyer's broker on how much commission they're going to pay. It could be a percentage, as I mentioned to earlier, and it could be a flat fee. And of course, all of this is negotiable between the buyer and the buyer's agent. So maybe when you find a property and let's say you had to pay, there were multiple offers and you were putting 10% down and you had $50,000. Now you have to pay 3% commission to the buyer's agent. So you need additional $15,000. So you could put that in the contract and say, I'll buy it for $515,000, ask seller for $15,000 in credit, and you can pay that money to the buyer's agent. So technically, you did not bring the money from your pocket. It came from the transaction. Of course, the bad thing is that now instead of buying it for $500,000, you're buying it for $515,000. But that's just an example. That's just a scenario that could happen. Or what could happen is maybe at $50,000 and you can come up with $10,000. Your friends are going to give it to you, or you had some extra savings, and you may tell the agent, look, I'll buy this property. It's a real nice property. You showed me a lot of properties. You found me my dream home. I want to buy it, but I cannot afford to pay you $15,000 because I'm buying this house for $505,000, for example, instead of $500,000. So instead of me paying you $15,000, I have to pay $5,000 more on this property or put $5,000 more down payment. So I'll only pay you $10,000. And that could be negotiable. That's between you and the buyer's agent or the buyer's broker. So it remains to be seen. The good thing about real estate is everything is negotiable, everything, until you close a transaction, whether it's who's going to pay for inspection, who's going to pay for appraisal. If you're getting a loan, how much is the lender charging you? 1 point, 2 points, half a point. How much is the listing agent charging the seller? Well, I'm charging 3% or 2%. Listing agent can say, you know what, who's going to pay for the photography? Is the seller going to pay or the listing agent going to pay? Everything is negotiable. So moving on, everything between the buyer and buyer's agent will be negotiable. Of course, the thing is everything has to be agreed mutually, and it will have to be done in writing. So there is no confusion at the time of close of escrow or at the time of recording of the property when you close escrow and funds are distributed. So that is a one big change that's coming on. And the other biggest change that I see from this is that the seller or the multiple listing service does not allow. And let's see, there's a call coming in. Hold on, sorry. I'm going to put my phone on airplane, learning the hard way. So sorry about that. So as I was saying, the new regulation is the multiple listing service will not allow the seller's party or the listing agent to add any kind of commission or compensation on the multiple listing service. So as a buyer's agent, when I show the property, I have no idea what the seller is going to offer any kind of compensation, not to the agents, but to the buyer. Because I mentioned to you earlier that the seller cannot pay any commission, compensation, or concession to the buyer's agent. They have to pay the buyer, and maybe the buyer can use that to pay the buyer's agent. So that is going to be a big change, and it remains to be seen how home showings will change and how the buyers will pay the buyer's broker and how much. So let's see what is going on. Let's move on to the next slide. I was showing you earlier, I wanted to show you the sample. These regulations, at least in California, they start on August 17th, 2024, and nationwide. But this is a form from the California Association of Realtors. It shows that the buyer's representation and broker compensation agreement. Basically, it's an agreement that the buyer is hiring a buyer's agent or a broker, because they always hire a broker for a certain amount of time. As you can see, a period A1 right here, it says beginning, today is July 29th, at 11:59, and you're going to hire us for 3 months or 2 months or whatever. So you put that number here. But the thing I wanted to show you is the number E1. If you look at over here where I'm pointing, E1 towards the bottom, it says amount of compensation. Oops. I keep getting these calls. I don't know why. Okay. So it shows you E1, number 48. It says amount of compensation. Over here, could be 3%, could be 2%, could be 1% of the acquisition price, and if any, of the purchase price, or it could be a flat fee. So you can put an attachment here and say, you know what, if the price is under 400, I'll pay you this much. If it's over 400, I'll pay you this much. But I wanted to show you exactly what the form is. So if when you do talk to a buyer's agent, and if you happen to be in California, your form will like this. Of course, in different states, it'll be a different form, but you'll get an idea of the form. I also want to touch on the residential listing agreement, which will be changing August 17. As you can see, this form has been revised as of 7/24, just a few days ago, and that is 7/20/24, not July 24. It's July 2024. So what I wanted to show over here is that when the seller lists a property, they give a time. Okay, you're going to list from today until 90 days, today until 6 months or whatever. Then they have number C1, compensation to seller's broker. So you will put over here that 3% of the listing price, if any, or you can put a flat fee, maybe $20,000 flat fee will go to the seller's broker. But here's the new thing that was not there before. And there's two things that are important about this, number C2. The first thing, it says additional compensation to seller's broker if the buyer is unrepresented. What that means is, let's say you are having an open house, or I was having an open house and I'm the listing agent, and the buyer walks in and says, oh my gosh, I love this. I came to see my mom. She lives down the street. I'm also looking, but I love this house. I want to buy the property. Hopefully the listing agent will ask you, do you have a buyer's agent? Do you have a buyer broker signed with that agent? And if you say, no, I don't have a buyer broker agreement, I just came from Texas, I feel like buying this property. So what that means is that buyer is unrepresented. Then if the listing agent sells this property to this buyer from Texas, in this example that I'm giving, then he will get this 2 or 3% that he or she agreed with the listing agent or the listing seller. And on top of that, they could get additional compensation. Could be another 2%, another 3%, or could be another $5,000, whatever that is negotiable. So that is a huge change coming. Also to give you another, not a warning, but even when you go to open houses now, moving on August 17th, when you go to an open house, they are going to make you sign a form to see if you're represented or not. And you will have to sign a form to see the open houses. I have not seen the form yet. If I would have seen it, I would have shown it to you, but I have not seen it. But there is such form out there. So all these will be in our form shortly if they're not already there. So here is a typical form that I printed about a week ago because I showed this to somebody else. This is a listing from one of our agents who sits in my office. And I wanted to show you that typically you would say a compensation or a commission. But now here is what I'm going to show you. If you look at what my arrow is, and if you can look at the screen, it shows concessions in price. That means there is no commission moving on. So they've already started adding it on there. So over here, the seller will tell the listing agent to put a concession in the price. That could be $5,000, $20,000, or it could be up to 6% of the purchase price, because the lenders don't allow more than 6% in concession. So that may be a factor, but that's where the 6% comes in. So the concession could be 6% of $500,000. So they could say, I'll pay $30,000 in concessions to the buyer, which the buyer can use as closing cost or inspections or repairs, or use some of that money to pay their agents, because sellers are now going to be educated that, look, the buyer's agent or the buyers will have to pay the buyer. So we recommend, at least I'm going to recommend my sellers when I talk to them, that, hey, if you are listing your house for $500,000, you would typically pay 6%, let's say. Now you only have to pay 3% to me. So could you keep that 3% as an option to pay the buyer's agent? And of course, just because they say it in the multiple listing service doesn't mean it's automatic. It all depends on your price, on your terms and your conditions, on your approval, if it's cash, if it's not cash. So all these things can change. So the seller can, at the time of offer, if it's a very low price or there's a contingent offer or buyer is not very well qualified, he may say, you know what, instead of the 30,000 concession, I only want to give 20,000 or 5,000 or 10,000. So all this can be changed, but it gives us an idea that this seller is willing to work with the buyer. So these changes are drastic as we go along. Moving on, one of the concerns that I have, and a lot of the agents have, and a lot of the industry has, well, the basic real estate industry has, as we know that the home affordability in the last 3 or 4 years has become less. It has always been expensive to buy a house. But in the last few years, especially the last 2 years, when the rates went up sky high, when the prices went up sky high, when the inflation went up sky high, the affordability became less and less, and it's at its lowest I've seen in the last 15 years. So let's look at California, for example. If you hear, the affordability in California was usually around 16% or so last few years. But according to this chart, which is by Best Brokers, it shows here that the affordability in California right now is at about 10%. Of course, it could be low in Orange County or Newport Beach. It could be a lot higher in Sacramento, but on average, the affordability index based on personal income as percentage of the median home price, the affordability is 10.56%. In Arizona, it's about 15%. New Mexico, it is 16%. In Texas, it's 20%. So if you compare Texas to California, 10% more of the population of Texas, or 10%, only 20% can afford the homes to buy today based on their income and the median home price. So in fact, a lot of the Californians are actually going to Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina because it's much more affordable over there as far as the price goes, and the affordability is much better. If we look at North Dakota, the affordability index is at almost 28%. South Dakota is 22.82%. And if we go to one of the lower states, I'm trying to find one that's lower than 10%. Let me take a quick look here. I'm not finding any quickly here. Anyway, I'm finding California is the most expensive one. And here it is, Hawaii, right here, Hawaii. Alaska is at 20%. Hawaii is so far the lowest. It's 9.23%, which is the home affordability by state in Hawaii is the lowest. And just to clarify, it is based on the personal income as a percentage of the median home sales price. In California, if I understand correctly, if I saw a report a few weeks ago, I noticed that the median sales price in California was around $800,000, which is almost double the national median, which is around $400,000. And in Orange County or in Anaheim Hills, where I'm living in the 92808 zip code and the 92807 zip code, the affordability or the median home price is over $1.2 million. It just gives you an idea. So I'm going to move on and talk about something else very important again. And that is going to be, let me just set this straight here. Some of the concerns about the buyers and the sellers. So we had a mastermind group where a lot of the agents, this was online, virtually, a lot of the groups got together, a group of buyers, a group of sellers, a group of realtors, affiliate members, which are the escrow and the title and the lenders and the inspectors and other people. And based on these, I'm going to read out some questions and try to explain those, answer those, because these questions were very common. And I'm sure if I'm reading out or if this was important question, it may affect you or you may have that question. So this question is coming from a home seller. And the question was, how does the recent NAR lawsuit and settlement impact my responsibility as a seller? Well, it impacts in the way that now you are no longer able to pay the buyer's agent any commission or concession. In fact, you may have to pay, you don't have to, you may choose to or opt to pay compensation to the buyers in the form of credit or closing cost or any kind of concession, so they can pay the buyer's agent, because the market is strong right now, but when it slows down, and there are signs of slowing down, you may need more buyers to come in your house, bring more buyers agent, and you're not getting any offers for a month, 2 months, 3 months. You may have to entice the buyers to pay their buyer's agent commission. So it'll definitely have an impact on you. The other question was, what are the key changes in commission regulations starting on August 17, 2024? And one of the key changes includes the requirement for clearer disclosures of commission arrangements and the ability for buyers to negotiate their agents' commissions directly. Sellers may also need to be more transparent about their contributions to commissions. So, like I said earlier, everything is going to have to be in writing. In fact, I don't know all the rules and regulations right now. I'm learning myself, and there's new rules and regulations coming on a daily basis. Some of them have come in. We've read about it. We've brushed up on it. And then the CAR or the MLS changes the rules. So we're changing. One of the rules that I think I heard correctly, and it's coming, is that two things. One is that, let's say I signed a buyer broker agreement with my buyer at 2%. I'm the buyer's agent, and the buyer is willing to pay me 2%. Or let's say on a flat fee on a $500,000 house, which they're looking for, they're willing to pay me only $10,000, which is 2%. But let's say I find them a house. Let's say if I find them a house and I find out that the concession is $15,000, which is 3%. So if the seller offers the buyers 3% in concessions, but I only had a 2% concession from the buyer, then I cannot, as an agent, ask my buyer for the 3%. I can only get 2%, and they can keep the 1%. So that's a major change that's happening. And also, from what I understand, and I'm not 100% sure, but 90% sure, because things are changing by the day, and I'm sure in the next 20 days before August 17th, there may be more changes coming. But what I've heard and read is that when we present the offer, if I'm the buyer's agent and I present this offer on a $500,000 house to the listing agent in writing, I understand that I have to show them the form about what compensation agreement I have with my buyer. So the seller's agent knows, and let the seller know that, hey, Mike Patel, the buyer's agent, is going to get paid 2% of this. So they have to know. So that has to be in writing. I'm not 100% sure, but that's coming, and that has to do with this question. One of the other questions that we had is that, what are the pros and cons of the new regulations on seller paid commissions? Well, the pro is, if you're a seller, you no longer have to pay 6%. You may just have to pay 3%, or you may pay 3% and offer 3% less on your listing and sale, and see how that goes on. I don't think that's going to happen, because if I was a seller, I'm going to pay the 3% or 2% and keep the full listing price. So that's the advantage that you have. The disadvantage is, if you would have offered 3%, and if I knew that you were offering 3% or 2.5% versus others offering 2%, I was going to show you home, so you would have had more traffic. But now that we don't know how much commissions are or how much compensations are, your traffic may slow down as far as from other buyers and buyer's agent. Or the other scenario could be that I do have a buyer, he's going to give you a full price, but the buyer cannot pay me any commission because he or she is barely coming up with a down payment, because it could be a VA loan or an FHA loan where they barely have money to put down payment. Where in the world are they going to pay me that? So they may not be able to buy the house if you don't offer them compensation. So I think that's a big con for sellers and for the buyers. And the advantage to the seller is they don't no longer have to pay the full commission to the listing agent, which paid half of that typically to the buyer's agent. The other common question we got was, how might these new regulations influence the timing of selling the home? This is a very cool question and very important question, because typically the way the housing selling works is, obviously in this market, I'm assuming nationwide, the days on market is less than 45 days. In 2021, 2022, it used to be less than 20 days. Right now, I would say it's about 45 days or more. In a typical recession when we had, I was back there in 2008, it took 4 or 5 or 6 months to sell a house. So how will this compensation, how will this commission things from the buyers to the buyer's agent affect the sale of your timing of your house. I personally think it's going to slow it down because there's going to be few days of communication going on between the 5 homes that I'm going to show. I'm going to call the agent and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, I'm going to be showing your house this Saturday, or I'm thinking about showing it. Is your seller serious about offering the compensation? I saw the multiple listing service. I saw that you're offering $30,000 based on a house of $500,000. How serious will the seller be of giving that if I bring an offer? So a lot of communication is going to go on. There's a lot of confusion going on. A lot of the buyers may be hesitant to sign a buyer broker agreement and maybe just sign one agreement per agent to show that house. So that may take longer to show a house versus, hey, Mike, I saw the sign. Can you show me the house? I'll say, sure, wait for me for an hour. It happens to be a vacant house. I'm going to run down and show it. Boom, it's done in an hour. Now, if they call me on a sign or somebody's driving by and knows that I'm the agent, they're going to call me and say, hey, Mike, I want to see this house I saw on 555 Main Street. So I'm going to say, okay, come to my office, or I have to meet with you, sign the buyer broker agreement. We have to get your pre-approval, get your approval, etc. And we have to agree on a price. Or he may say, well, you know what, my wife is out of town or my husband's out of town, so we may have to wait. So it's going to slow things down, I think, in the beginning. So that's my personal opinion, but based on facts and based on talking to a lot of people, it may slow things down initially and it'll come back on track. And coming back on track could be within 3 months, could be within 90 days, could be a year. We don't know what's going to happen because who knows, there may be another appeal come up and they may change the rules and regulations again based on the reaction from the buyers, sellers, the real estate agents, the appraisers, the lenders, etc. I'll give you an example. I see a problem already. So let's say you were going to buy a house at $500,000 and you are going to put 20% down and you have some extra money, 5,000, 10,000 extra, or you can borrow. So if you're a strong buyer with a 20% down and you have extra money, you have no problem paying the commission to the buyer's agent, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3%. Let's go to an FHA buyer. Typically, these are first-time home buyers. They are looking for a government loan. This is a home for first-time home buyers, government loan, where you only have to pay 3.5% down. Most of the FHA loans, when you put 3.5% down, they usually don't have a lot of down payment. In fact, I would say 60-70% of FHA loans that put 3.5% down also ask for closing cost from the sellers. So if I'm buying a $500,000 house in California and I'm putting 3.5% down, which is about $12,500, I may just have $12,500. I have 2 problems. One, I have to ask the seller for the closing costs. So, hey, seller, could you give us $10,000 in closing costs because I have to pay my lender, I have to do the appraiser, I have to do property tax, blah, blah, blah. But now I need another $10,000, $15,000 because I have to pay my darn agent. So that's going to change things. So it's going to make it even more difficult for the first-time home buyers to buy, and it's going to make the home affordability even more tougher, or even tougher. Sorry, I shouldn't say more tougher, just tougher. It is tough for the first-time buyers right now. This will just make it tougher and tougher. So the real estate industry is changing. It's going to hit hard to the first-time home buyers. And for the other buyers, second-time buyers, investors, those who have money, those who have equity, pull the equity and pay, etc., it should not be a problem. But I see a big dilemma for first-time buyers, especially in states like California, New York, Washington, Massachusetts, Maryland, where the prices are so high that it's going to make it difficult for the buyers to come up with the commissions to the buyer's agent, especially when they're asking 2 or 3%. And most of the buyer's agent will ask for 2 or 3% because it is a lot of work. We work just on commissions. And you may say, well, you know, if you show me $1 million home in Anaheim Hills, you're going to make $30,000. It's not that easy, because to find the right buyer at the right time for the buyer to pay us that commission, we have to go through a lot of buyers. Just because all the buyers come in and work with us doesn't mean they all buy. Some of them don't end up buying. They may change their mind, or they lose a job, or something happens and they cannot buy. So it's a lot of work for the buyer's agent, just like it's a lot of work for the listing agent, but it's a tough call. So yes, we make a big commission on transactions, but there are not even enough transactions. I'll give you some statistics so you know, and then I'll head on to the question that our buyers are asking regarding this lawsuit. So the statistics is that on average, according to the NAR, an average agent sells, I'm going to be nice and say less than 5 homes per year. An average agent makes 70,000 or less per year. So an agent does not make a lot of money. To make matters worse, since 2021 and 2022, I mentioned earlier, there were 2 million realtor members. When the market got tough, the good agents, the skilled agents, the hardworking agents, they hung in there. They're still there. There's about 1.5 million of us still there. But the prediction is once this commission things hit and the whole new chapter of negotiating with the buyers, it's tough enough to negotiate with the seller and getting a listing agreement. It's going to be tough to get a listing agreement with the buyers. They predict, or the notion is, or the thinking is that more agents will quit the business. So from 1.5, it may go down to 1.3, 1.2. That's the stipulation or a consensus out there, but who knows? The good thing is for the agents who hang around, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be working. So the good thing is when there were 2 million agents, there were a lot of competition. Now there's 1.5. In 6, 7 months, 8 months, or end of 2025, maybe there's only 1 million agents. What's going to happen is these million agents that are left there, million realtors or 1.2 realtors, they are probably skilled, experienced, know how to communicate, know how to handle, give you good service. So it'll be good for the agents and realtors themselves. It'll also be good for the consumers, the buyers, the sellers, the lenders, and the affiliates. So I think that's a good thing. So let's move on to what are the common questions that buyers are asking regarding this whole NAR settlement and the new regulations. One of the common question was, how will the recent National Association of Realtors lawsuit and settlement affect my home buying process? This is a buyer. Well, as I mentioned earlier, many times it's going to change a lot. You're going to have a listing, a buyer's agent agreement. You have to have an agreement with the broker to see how much compensation you're going to pay them. Then once you decide and you find an agent that you're going to work with, you're going to have to find a seller who's going to pay you those concessions so that you can pay your buyer's agent. So this is going to change your transaction process. I think it's going to delay things, make it more complicated. The buyers is going to have to be more educated about the whole process. My gut feeling is the sellers, when they put their house for sale, they're more educated, more well-versed in the home selling process when you compare it to buyers on the buying process. So now the buyers are going to have to educate them more, or go online, go on YouTube, talk to other realtors, read up, brush up before you start your process. So I think it's going to make it a little bit more difficult and longer for that. Again, this is a common question which already answered, but I want to mention it to you because this is a common question. It is, what are the new regulations regarding buyer paid commission starting August 17, 2024? Well, the buyer paid commissions are that buyer has to pay the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent cannot get paid by the seller or the seller's party anymore. That means the listing broker cannot pay the seller's agent or the seller's broker. So that's a big thing, huge thing. Imagine, I'm showing a house right now. On Saturday, I'm showing a $3 million house. And I have not yet have them sign a buyer broker agreement because I'm nervous. I'm going to ask for 3%. I'm preparing for it. I'm talking to my manager about how to approach it. He's a $3 million buyer. They can go up to $4 million. I'm showing them a house which is not in the market. So it's a private buyer that I know personally. And I happen to know this seller who wants to sell, but does not want to put it on the multiple listing service or market it out. So I'm going to have them sign a buyer broker agreement signing for 3 months, because it's just for 1 or 2 homes that are off market, with a 3% commission. So on a $3 million home, that's $90,000. Will the buyer think I'm worth $90,000 or my broker worth $90,000? Let's find out, but I'm going to ask for it. I'm going to test out the water. And of course, if he or she offers me 2%, I'll gladly take it. Not that I'm greedy, but as long as the buyer is happy buying that house and they have a good contract between the buyer and the seller and the terms and condition, and if I get the buyer's dream come true by selling them a house that they want, which is not even on the market, then I'm worth $60,000. I'm worth $90,000 because I'm not only selling them a house, and I know a lot of buyers don't think that way, but I'm getting the buyer's dream come true in their price range, in their location, at their time. So a lot of things involved. And I'm negotiating what they want between the buyer and the seller. So let's see what happens. The other question that was asked is, will the new rules on seller paid commission increase or decrease the overall cost of buying a home? I think, number one, that the cost for the seller is going to go down. In this case, let's say typically 3%, because the seller no longer has to pay the 3%. And I've been listing a lot of homes, and I know one thing: sellers going to keep every penny that they can. So they're only going to give 3% on a $500,000 house, which is $15,000. And if I tell the seller, hey, look, seller, you're not listing it for 6%. Why don't you list it for $485 because you're only paying 3% commission and give 3%? They're going to say, no, I want $500,000. I'll pay you 3%. So it's going to increase the net for the seller, but it is going to be 100% decrease or increase the net that they come up from pocket, or the cost on their net sheet is going to be higher. So typically, let's go back to the FHA loan. If I have a buyer buying a $500,000 house, they're going to pay, let's say 3.5%, that's $12,500 down, and closing costs, let's say another $10,000. Now they're going to have to pay $15,000 to the agent. So the cost just went up significantly. So the cost of the buyer is going to go up significantly overall, but they can always get concession from the seller. And my guess is, or my gut feeling is, that if the buyer is offering 3% to the buyer's agent, seller may not pay the 3%. Seller may just say, you know what, I'll be nice, I'll pay you 1.5% commission, and you can take out your own 1.5%. So at the end of the day, the buyers are going to dish out more. And I think they are the biggest culprits, or the biggest people. They're going to pay the price for this industry change. And I think it's a stupid law that came up with. Speaking of a stupid law, I wanted to mention something. Let me go back to the slides here, and I wanted to show you something. I wanted to discuss something with you. Not this slide. Let me go back. And this is an important thing for you to know. Is this slide? Where is it? Okay, all right, here. So I want to read to you, because this is important for you to understand what this lawsuit is not about. And this is from an article that I came across, which I talked to one of the buyers earlier a few days ago. What this lawsuit is not about. This was not about making the industry better for buyers and sellers, getting the plaintiff's money back, or unethical practices of real estate professionals. It was a class action lawsuit, which is by design, in most cases, a money maker, mostly for attorneys. And I strongly believe this. This has to do with the disclosures and how the money was paid. But few people got together, sued, and these attorneys made it into a class action lawsuit. In this case, let's understand a little more about the attorneys for the plaintiffs. The law firm that initiated this lawsuit, Ketchmarks and McCreight, is a four-man firm. It became a class action lawsuit. And from what I understand, and I'm not 100% sure, but from my understanding, let me read this next paragraph, so you understand what this lawsuit is not, what it is about. And it's very important that you understand this, and I understand this. Originally winning a judgment of $1.8 billion in March 2024, it dropped to a settlement of $418 million, a big drop, okay? The attorney fees based on settlement comes to around $256 million. Did you understand that? That was the attorney fees. Let me read that. That was the attorney fees. From $418 million, $256 million went to the attorneys. Does this make sense to you? It does not to me. I know there's some rich attorney out there. Probably at a beach having a Mai Tai or having a time of their life. Now, that number may change based on future rulings and judgments, but that is the amount they are making on this settlement. Again, this was not about commissions. It was about something else and got worse and worse. And I won't go into the detail, but one of the reasons they won this lawsuit is because, from what I'm hearing, and it's just what I'm hearing, is that the jury, out of the jury that decided to give this settlement money to their class action lawsuit, in the jury pool, there was only 2 people who really understood buying and transactions or selling transaction. The rest were not aware of this transaction, and that may have had an impact on this 418 million lawsuit. But that's not the impact we're worried about. We're worried about the impact it's having on the sellers, the buyers, and the buyer's agent, and changing the whole industry around for something that was not really that significant based on the lawsuit that we are seeing. So that's what we are seeing right now. Let's see how things unfold. I'm hoping and crossing fingers that there might be an appeal come in before August 17th, and something may stop or something may change. Or once they start this process, it may start and then another regulation may come in, or another regulation can be changed. Because let's face it, any regulations that come in can be changed. Nothing is etched in stone. If there is a law, it can be changed. If there's a regulation, it can be changed. So we're just hoping, or I'm just hoping, for the benefit of the buyer more than the benefit of the seller, that this stipulation change, the stipulation of disclosures and writing on each home or each showing, the commissions that the buyer has to pay, especially the first-time home buyer. Especially, imagine somebody selling a $5 million house and you're asking for 3%. That's a lot of commission asking up front. How is that going to go through? I'm not sure. We'll figure it out. I'll find out mine in the next week when I go talk to the buyers, and I'm going to be asking for 3% commission on a $3 million house. Could be a $4 million house. In that case, the commission is $123,000 or $120,000 to the buyer's broker. So things are changing. There's a lot of disclosures coming up. Our multiple listing chain is changing. As I go to the multiple listing service every few days to check on it, there's something new popping up on there. So it's even difficult or challenging for us to keep up with everything, because it's one thing when you read stuff and brush up on it, and then our managers or brokers or attorneys tell us, oh, guess what? That stipulation 555 is no longer valid. They've changed it. So we've gone through a lot of changes. And my biggest scare is these changes came very rapidly. I mean, this thing got settled in April and it's only July. And they did all this within a few months. A big industry change with 50 plus states, with hundreds and hundreds of counties, with 1,300 multiple listing service organizations. They've changed and jammed all these new regulations, new laws, new advertising, new disclosures in 3 or 4 months. So something's going to have to change once we go along, because I am sure that there's some mistakes being made and they're going to have to be changed. Anyway, I'm seeing somebody is looking at on my channel, so I'm just going to say hi to them. I'm not even sure how to say hi, but I'll see if I can respond over here. Thanks, Robert, for joining. I'm not sure if you're still there, but if you are, hello. And if you did come on, I appreciate it. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments, whether you're watching live, or I'm sure most of the people or most of the viewers will watch this after on my recording on my YouTube channel, which is the Home Savvy Central. And thanks for watching. If you are watching, if you have any question, or if you want to make any comments, please mention them in the comments. I'll respond to your comments. If you have any questions, if I don't have any question, or if I'm out of your state versus if I'm in my state, I will make sure I'll get you the answer, an appropriate and correct answer for you. If it's in California, I can only answer for California because I'm aware of California laws, at least most of them. I may not be aware of a Texas law or a Florida law, or I can hook you up with an agent. Also, if you are looking for a realtor to work with and want to know more about all these rules and regulation, whether you're a buyer's agent or a seller's agent and want to study, and want to know an agent who is a savvy agent, experienced agent, been around for a while, is worth the commission that you're going to pay now. If you need a referral, I'm going to put a link in the comments on the first comment. Click on it. It's a short form. I'll make sure I call you and refer you a great agent. So do keep that in mind. And if you have any other questions, or if you would like to see more live streaming like this, let me know some topics and I'll be glad to touch on those. I want to thank you for watching. Mike Patel. Thank you.